not wrong, that we are organizing this kind of events. And this is all centered around the FOLUR gender working group within the FACS community that UNDP supports. Next slide, please. That is facilitated by World Bank and GGP UNDP. I'm pretty sure that many of you have joined already the FOLUR gender equality community within the FACS community, but there is a lot of useful resources for our work. And the objective is to provide support. The main objective is to provide support to country projects in FOLUR, within FOLUR, to achieve gender objectives in their programs, in their specific programs. However, the FOLUR area of work is very broad, so it's open to practitioners from other interventions and programs implemented by different partners, and they also can find these resources useful, as it's the case today, that we don't have only FOLUR colleagues here present, but we have also participants working with different projects. This community has enabled us to create a network of gender specialists. So there is already a network that is established, and we have discussions with each other within these groups or also in other settings. So creates a community of practice and encourages sharing of experiences. Next slide, please. Some of the key activities that have been undertaken throughout these years, the first one was this resource guide that we developed that includes all key resources related to gender equality and food systems and restoration. That it brings together the resources, summarizes them in a very accessible way. The resource guide has now been updated because we collected resources until 2023, and it will be published soon, the new edition, the new updated edition. One of the main activities have been the FOLUR Gender Learning Program, which is actually this activity takes part within the learning program. The idea was to create space for FOLUR members and others to participate in different learning events, and this is the second sort of round of learning program. We're going to talk a little bit more in details in the next slide. We also organize events, regional or worldwide events, or what is important that we integrate gender-related activities or themes for discussion in regional, various regional forums related to food systems and FOLUR. For example, just in June, there was an activity on sustainable palm oil in Malaysia, in Asia, and some of the colleagues that are here also participated, if I'm right, Sandra. We have colleagues that have participated from participants in the meeting today. Where a specific section was dedicated to gender equality. And we also have developed several case studies to see how FOLUR is progressing with relation to gender equality. That you can find them. They are very practical, and we hope that they can inspire work in other countries. Next slide, please. So about the gender learning program, from in 2023-2024, we organized several courses. The first one was an introductory course, and then it was followed by more 3 thematic specific courses focused on integrated landscape management, sustainable value chains, and
may I ask you to take us through the meet a bit faster, please?
Sorry?
Take us through the learning.
Through the learning, yes.
Yeah, people can read this. That's okay. We will circulate this slide for you.
Yes.
So let's learn together.
Yes. And yes, and now we're on the gender learning program too, that we move to the next phase. So today, as Pascal mentioned, I'll be discussing some of the key gender equality concepts. We're going to talk about gender inequalities, where they come from in the context of landscape and food systems, and then some of the legal and policy frameworks that can help us address the gender inequalities. Then the next presentation will be Patty's recording. She will bring some examples from FOLUR country projects, with the hope that we can learn from these experiences and try to reflect on them and replicate them in countries where have just initiated with the implementation of the program. Just to specify two things. First of all, FOLUR is a very, as I mentioned, is a very broad program. We usually refer to FOLUR when we talk, but when we say FOLUR, we mean integrated landscape management, work on integrated landscape management, work on sustainable value chains, and work on restoration. So these are quite broad, and we hope that all of you can find yourselves working within any of these broader areas. And the other thing I wanted to stress is that these slides may seem a bit long when you see them. I'm not going to focus on everything there. I will try to discuss the most important issues, but we are sharing this presentation at the end. So we tried to put as many things as possible there so that you can always go back and refer and use for your work if you find them useful. Next slide, please. So why gender matters, why this is very basic, but it's important always to remind ourselves, because sometimes we get caught into our work and we're like, so why do we do this work? But it's very simple, because women are an important, essential part of work on land use and food systems, but they are not visible enough. They are not rewarded enough for their work. So we really need to bring out strongly their contribution, and very importantly, to address problems, challenges that hold women back from participating, and especially in decision-making levels, and benefiting equally from all opportunities that are offered there by governments, international organizations. Several research have proven that inequality, that women's inclusion strengthens sustainability, strengthen economic opportunities. In general, in many countries where women are fully involved, there has been records that the level of productivity is high, and in general, it helps sustainability and eco-friendly systems of food system. In this context, in order to understand why we have this kind of issue or problem of women not being valued as they should, we have to go back to gender norms, which is typical not only in this area, but in all other sectors where women are underrepresented or not fully valued. And this helps a lot to address the issue. So basically, we have to go at the root causes, which is gender inequality, which is traditional harmful gender norms, actually, that are at the basis of this. Next slide, please. Gender norms, as you all probably know, I mean, are aware, they are socially constructed beliefs. They are when we are born, we're not supposed to do certain things because we are women and men, but it's a society that somehow dictates what women and men should do. And for certain things, there is nothing wrong with this. And when women and men choose freely to do certain things and not to do other things, this is fine. But then the problem becomes when the society imposes on us, on women or on men, this kind of belief that you are prepared to do this and not that. For example, for men, you are better positioned to take a leading role than doing the hard work, whereas for women is the other way around, or for women to be the main caregivers in the house, to take care of the family, also to work in the field, but not manage the income of the family. So this becomes the problem. And we have to understand that gender roles evolve, and thankfully they have evolved quite a lot. And we are now at when in many parts of the world, including in Asia, women have a very strong position in society. But this is not even everywhere, and even within a country that has very good gender equality records, women from specific groups, especially rural women, rural women from marginalized communities, they are still lacking behind. So we need to think, when we think about women empowerment, not only women elected members of the parliament or government, or women who had the opportunity to be educated, to study, but we have to think about women who haven't had these opportunities because of gender roles, because their parents thought that it was not okay for a girl to go to school. So we have to think about these women, and this is where we are here for them, actually. Next slide, please. So if these gender norms are left unchallenged, if we do not discuss this, if we don't challenge them, we create gender inequalities. And there are many gender inequalities that are differences actually in access to opportunities based only on gender. And inequality can take different forms. One of the main obvious one is unequal access to land. Women, even though they are supposed to be owners of their land, they do not appear in the land titles, or even if they may appear, they do not have the right to manage or to sort of administer their own land. Unequal access to credits. Women may not be able to receive credits for agriculture development of their farm, inputs, technology, participation in decision making. Sometimes women are added just as a number, but without actually true voice. Pay gap is quite a huge problem. Women, and it's not only in agriculture, this is across sectors, in finance, in health sector, in education sometimes. So the women are much paid lower. There is always a gender, even in European countries, in the EU, there is a very high pay gap between women and men, especially in the private sector. Unpaid care work, so women have to work in their families to take care of the children, to take care of the elderly, the people with disabilities, but they also have to work a lot in the fields. So, but this unpaid care work, it doesn't count. And if sometimes they have to give up working, the government is ideally and legally supposed to recognize this unpaid care work through social support, but it doesn't happen everywhere. And this leads also to gender discrimination, which is sort of the effect of policies or legislation or practices in women and men. Gender equality is a human right. Then when women are discriminated, we have a violation of their human rights. So we have to bear this in mind. And discrimination could be direct. For example, the law prohibiting women to own property. This is a bland discriminatory law. Then there are sort of more subtle forms of discrimination that sometimes we don't see, we don't realize that they exist, but they are very strong, and these are actually the main problem. Because a lot of countries say that our legislation on gender equality is perfect, we have made a lot of advances, but then when it comes to implementation, you see a lot of problems, and this comes because there are discriminatory practices. For example, I'm trying to give a simple example that certain services, advisory services, or training, or are organized either in during times when women cannot participate because they have to take care of the kids and there are no kindergartens in the area where they live, or they are dominated by men, and women find it difficult to speak, to go. They may fear violence, gender-based violence. So there are some small nuances that make a huge difference. And then there is multiple forms of discrimination that I mentioned, that women from some specific groups are even more affected, like women with disabilities, ethnic minorities, etc., that they face discrimination first because they are women, but also because they are from these groups. Next slide, please. Here we wanted to involve you a little bit and to have also your ideas, to think a little bit about, in your context, in your community, in your project, what is the gender inequality issue that is more critical, more present where you live at different levels. So these are some, there might be others. Some might not be relevant for you, but in your opinion, what would be the one that you really feel that is very problematic? Alejandra, if you can.
Absolutely. Thank you, Stella. I would invite everybody to scan the code that it's right now on the slide. and the QR, and then log in through the code that it's in. I believe my colleagues have already, exactly, Sandra has already sent the message on the chat box, and I will share my screen in 1 second so that you all can take part on this Menti.
Yes, please, colleague, we'll give you a minute to join the Menti. The more we are there, the more fun. So please go there and share with us your opinions or your answers on this.
Okay, so some answers are starting to kick in.
Let's give a bit more time to everybody.
Absolutely.
Supporting women's leadership, yes. Access, yes, they are very important. Reforming laws and policies, it's an issue. And please feel free to write your reasoning why you think this is the case in your community in the chat box, if you feel you want to reflect on your answer. Yeah, I was a bit surprised that challenging norms is not come out as a very key. Well, that's actually, it's one of the root causes. But some countries have moved from that and are more advanced in challenging norms and engagement of leaders. For example, religious leaders are important in engagement in this context to challenge norms, and there are strategies to work with them, because it's important to be ally with everyone, not to be confrontational with communities. It's important that we start reforming our understanding of gender norms in a constructive way. And reforming laws, yes, this comes actually at the end, because as I mentioned, many countries, as a result of the efforts of international community through the adoption of international treaties and human rights, have made government more aware of the need to change their laws, because otherwise they would be always in breach of international law. We're going to talk about it later. But then the challenge remains the implementation in practice. Okay, so supporting women leadership in farming, restoration, and ecology comes as the top inequality.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then challenging norms. Yeah. Yes, it's a very interesting perspective that we're seeing. But as I said, we don't have time to stop now and talk about this, but you can always write your thoughts on the chat box.
Yes, please do that. Take us through the next part, Stella.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay, so now we move from this discussion of theory into concrete action, sort of, to say that what we aim is women's empowerment. But women's empowerment is not just giving access and making sure that the women and men have equal rights, because this is the very basic. But important is to give them the agency to use these rights, to give them the opportunities and the power and the resources. Which is not easy. This is the most difficult part. And this requires interventions from different angles. Reforms of laws, as I mentioned, but also expand choices and opportunities. When we talk about choices and opportunities, what comes to everyone's minds is education. Without education, even though you have the woman, everyone has the rights in paper, they are not able to achieve them because they do not know how to do that. It's transforming institutions. It comes hand in hand with reforming discriminatory laws. You may have good laws, but if the government institutions are not prepared, do not have the capacity, do not have the mindset, the will, have not created a gender equality department or ministry with adequate resources to support this process, the implementation will not be adequate.
Stella, build confidence in agency. Build confidence in agency. Can you expand in one sentence? Build confidence of who?
Confidence of women and agency of women. We're always talking about women here in terms of, we cannot write everything in the slide, and thank you so much for pointing this out, because for some people, but women should have the agency to act upon their free will, as I mentioned, because if a woman chooses not to work, to stay at home because she just wants to and has the economic opportunity, you cannot force her, and it's fine, and it's totally fine. But if a woman wants to work but she cannot because her husband doesn't allow her, that is a problem, and that's where she doesn't have agency. So this is the difference that we're talking about. We're not saying that all women should go out there and work, as also with the men, but those that want, they cannot be stopped, or they cannot work and not be valued for their work. Their work cannot be considered as something that they have to do because they are women. So this is the big thing, sort of question, said very simply. We're trying to say this in simple terms. Next slide, please. So this is a bit, that may sound a bit abstract for those that do not necessarily work on gender equality or human rights issues. But this is very important, because the CEDAW Convention and the SDGs, colleagues working for the UN know very well SDGs, but also CEDAW Convention, the Convention on the Elimination of all forms of discrimination against women, is the backing, the legal and policy backing of our work. So what we say here does not come out of my mind or Pascal's mind. This is something that governments have agreed on. So all countries, almost all countries of the world, are party to CEDAW Convention, which is the leading convention that has had great influence actually in progressing gender equality around the world. And governments are obliged by this. The moment they become party, they have the legal obligation to implement them, and they have to report to the CEDAW committee that monitors the implementation of this convention. And CEDAW talks about gender equality across areas, everything that women sort of are part of, every part of life. But they also have a specific article provision on rural women, which is very good, and it is very comprehensive, and doesn't talk only about government's obligation to involve women fully and make sure that they benefit equally from agriculture programs, support, finance support, but they also have equal access to other services, which are also important for women's empowerment, like education, health, social services, participation in decision-making processes, etc. So as I mentioned before, our work in food and agriculture is one aspect of women's empowerment, or rural women empowerment. But it's important, and for this kind of programs cannot achieve everything, because they have to be complemented by other support and other interventions that support women with other services that we mentioned here, like healthcare, education. It's very important that these programs are implemented in silos with each other, and they're not like completely disconnected, because otherwise the impact will be very small. And this has been always actually me as an external consultant for the UN, I see this often, and the different agencies, for example, implement different programs which are very good, but then a lack of coordination diminishes the impact sometimes, not always, but sometimes diminishes impact. As I mentioned, the CEDAW has an independent body, which is called CEDAW Committee, that monitors progressively every 4 to 6 years how countries are doing. And they issue concluding observations. So if you Google your own country and CEDAW, you're going to find the latest concluding observations, and you're going to see that they have a specific paragraph on rural women, where they summarize what are some of the main key issues, and they make some specific strategic recommendations that are very useful. And you can find them, you can use them in your documents as a basis. They also interpret different provisions of the convention, and one of them is on Article 14. So they have issued this general recommendation on rural women, which is a very, very good resource because it touches upon all key issues that we are talking about, but from both a legal and practical perspective: economic and social life, land and natural resources, agriculture and land policies, financial services. So almost everything that we work on, it's there. So it's a very good resource. And as I mentioned, SDGs, they are also important. They are a political commitment. They are not a legal commitment, but they are there to galvanize governments, especially to dedicate resources, financial resources, to advance in general sustainability agenda, and especially gender equality is a key area there. It's a dedicated goal on gender equality, but there are specific targets in other goals, and including for rural women and empowerment of women in agriculture. Next slide, please. Now, we've heard a lot about gender mainstreaming. What is this gender mainstreaming or gender integration? There are different terms that are being used. This is actually a tool that is being used to make this policy and legal framework that I mentioned practical and to integrate it into the programming that we do at different levels. We're going to speak about it. So basically, all policies, programs at the national level or regional level or small community projects have to integrate gender to ensure that women and men benefit equally and are become transformative actions. They're just not adding women because just they have to tick gender, but to do it properly, you have to integrate gender through this methodology that it's quite well developed. And the degree of gender mainstreaming varies. We have what is called gender sensitive or gender safeguards, and then we have gender transformative interventions. Now, before we explain them, we wanted to hear a bit from you, if you kind of have heard about them and what is your thought. Do you think, this is going to be a Zoom poll that Alejandra is sharing. Do you think that when we say this program has a gender safeguard section, does it cover all gender equality issues that we talk about? Is it sufficient? Yes or no? So if you have gender safeguards in your project, for example, do you think that you are okay with gender mainstreaming and you have fulfilled sort of your programming obligations with regards to gender? You can answer.
We've got 17 answers so far.
Okay.
And so far the answers are like 4 to yes, 12 to no, and 1 to I don't know. So it seems like no is the prevalent answer amongst our participants, with 71% of 72% now answers being that.
Yeah.
So as we have 18 answers so far, I would finish 19, 74 again.
Okay.
No being the winning one. So I would stop the voting if you agree, Stella, and we can carry on.
Yes, please go back to, if you could go back to the presentation.
Absolutely. So indeed, 74% of our participants decided that no, they don't think gender-sensitive interventions and safeguards address all inequality.
You may write your ideas in the chat. I'll just try to explain briefly for colleagues that are new in this, and definitely they cannot know, because if you haven't worked in this area, it's perfectly fine not to know. Even us that when started working, we didn't know. So it comes with learning. So basically, gender safeguards are some basic requirements that have to accompany any kind of project. It doesn't matter where, to make sure that the program does not do harm to women. For example, that there are no environments when women can be harmed by gender-based violence, for example, because it has happened that there has been organized some trainings in some areas where women have been violated. So they have been victims of gender-based violence. Sort of created in an environment that the program, a certain intervention, supported. And this is becomes very problematic because interventions are supposed to help people, not to harm them. So this is the very basic. And there are other aspects, but they are related mainly to this, to the safety, to the safety of women, or not doing harm, giving them the opportunity to complain, to submit complaints, or for example, when a reconstruction program, development program takes place, both women and men have to express their informed prior consent about it. This is like a famous principle of international law. And this comes, it's part of gender safeguards. But now when we talk about gender transformative, this goes much more beyond that. This looks at the problems at the root of women's not participating from the benefits of the program. Why women are not going to the extension services, not receiving training, why women cannot receive credit, why women cannot trade in the market, why women cannot use technology, and so why women cannot sell their own land if they want to sell, or receive a loan, sort of this kind of things. Why women do not fully, there are numbers in committees, in regional or farm or village committees, they are there, but why they do not speak? Because they do not know, or because they know but they haven't had the opportunity to speak in public places. So what we go deeper here with gender transformative interventions, and this is done through this process of gender mainstreaming. Next, please. As I mentioned, gender mainstreaming can take place at different levels, and here we're just giving some examples for you to sort of make it more concrete, to understand what we're talking about. For example, the gender has been integrated in the National Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan of Mexico. So this has been done at the national level. When the strategy was developed, there has been a very elaborated process of integrating gender through different tools that I'm going to explain, a gender analysis, and it features very strongly in this strategy. At the regional level, for example, the RED Plus plans in several Asia countries, and maybe you can also, maybe you know about it and you can share your own experience, has been quite successful. For example, one good example that come across literature is the RED Plus action plan in Vietnam, in Lam Dong region. This takes place usually in those countries that are more decentralized. So the level of decentralization is high, and the regional sort of governance is quite strong. And then at the basic level, at the community level, for example, integrating gender in a project that supports farmer cooperatives in Rwanda. So this is a small scale sort of community projects, even here. So you have different sort of levels of integrating gender.
Stella? We are running a bit late. Do you think you could speed up a little bit, because we would like to hear from colleagues through the next mentee about opportunities? Do you think you could speed up? Is that possible?
Yes. I have just a few slides left, and I will try to be fast.
Go ahead.
Yes, thank you for reminding. Next slide, please. So these are some concrete tools. That's why it's heavy text, but I leave it with you, so you start always from a gender analysis. Everyone has heard the gender analysis. If you do not do it at every level, you do not understand where the problems are. You need to find the gaps through this gender analysis, and all these resources that I mentioned help with this, starting from CIDO reports, reports of civil society organizations, but more importantly, talking to women directly through surveys, participatory focus groups, and so on. Once you identify the problems, you define gender-responsive objectives and integrate them in the whole. So we're talking about, for example, a simple project document for a project. You do a gender analysis, you bring out problems, and then you define the results framework based on these gaps. So it's not that you develop a project and then you think, okay, well, we need to consider gender. No, it has to be done right at the beginning. And this is sometimes that's why implementing gender creates problems, because it's an afterthought after the project have been designed. and this creates problem. And it has to be, in order to be right, you have to also allocate budget for specific gender-related activities. And there's always monitoring and evaluation, and sex disaggregated data is key in this process. There are a lot of resources on these that we can share if you want to dig more onto this sort of tools that you use. Next slide, please. And then here in the following slides, we have various examples of what can be done through gender mainstreaming at the national level, regional level, and community level. These are examples, they are not exhaustive, there are many other things, but it starts with the reforms of laws when they are not in compliance with CEDAW, for example. It starts with gender in sustainable agriculture and restoration, especially addressing intersectional discrimination. This is key. When you do the gender gap, you have to think not only women in general as a homogeneous group, but within this group of women, there are many layers and other women that are even more disadvantaged. And data. Next slide, please. At the regional level as well, the regional level has to do with alignment of national strategies and policies, bringing them to the regional and then community level. And it's also a creation of networks, regional networks of sharing of experience, because in land use, we have ecosystems. We do not have only geographic regions or municipalities of districts. It depends. So you have ecosystems that go across this administrative boundary, sort of to say. That's why you have to have a regional perspective in governance in this area. It's more specific than other areas when you talk about governance and gender equality. Gender quotas are very important, even though people sometimes do not consider, even women do not consider them not effective, but as a way of accepting that women are weak or not represented. They are very important. Without gender quotas, in my belief, women wouldn't be where they are everywhere in the world. And it starts at the political level, at the representation at the political level, but it goes at it should be an important part of any kind of governance at any level of organization of our life. And then the important part is the community, what you do, next slide, please, what you do at the community level. How to, like, these are sort of tailored to the needs of different communities. For example, in many countries, the customary and informal practices are very problematic, and they are at the root of these problems. And as I said, FOLUR and other similar programs may not be sufficient to address all these issues, do not have the resources to address all these issues. That's why it's important to utilize other opportunities and other resources. And the final slide is about FOLUR teams or practitioners working, what they can do. How can they influence policies? They have to support national partners in this process. The role of international organizations is primarily to support national partners. The role of civil society organizations is mainly to support communities. So basically, I mean, they interlink, but they have to be positioned and to know what would be a strategic intervention to make it more efficient, the whole process. So you have different examples that you can go back and see how you can influence these processes. And we are concluding now with another mentee. We have a lot of mentees today.
Yes, thank you, Stella. We would like to hear from all of you about where you see opportunities for gender equality in your context, and also the type of gender-related intervention that seems to be more relevant. So we're going to run a Menti. Alejandra, would you mind showing this? And if you can join again if you dropped out of it. And this information makes the work even more relevant, especially for others. So please join in. Thanks, Stella, for keeping on time. That's wonderful. Okay, so we've got 2 questions, I think. So at what level do you see opportunity to advance gender equality? National, regional, or community level? speak for yourself, of course. We've got 18 people in the Menti, 7 votes. Community level?
Yeah, community level. Normally, the community level should have sort of, there it's more concrete when you see opportunities, but you always have to have the backing of national level interventions. Policies and legislation are always important. But if that is exhausted, if they are in place, then you have to work really at the community level. Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
So we've got 12 participants answering, and
Let's give a little bit more time, Alejandra. Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, thank you. It's not surprising that the regional level is lower, actually.
Yeah.
I wonder whether you've seen a lot of very positive action taking at regional level on gender equality, Stella.
Not really, actually, not many. Actually, when I was trying to find examples from the Red Plus initiative were more prominent. Yeah, I mean, it depends on as I said, in the organization of the countries, how decentralized, how much power provinces have. So it depends on the countries, basically. If they have enough autonomy to have their own policies or their own legal, usually it's policies, there is more space. But then when it's not decentralized, you have just the central government and local government, then you don't have the space, basically. So it makes sense. It could be only just regional projects supported by international partners, maybe following the ecosystems, but it doesn't come from the government. So.
Okay, we've got 12 people who voted, 20 registered in the Menti. So we're going to move to the next question, Alejandra, which takes a bit longer to process. So if you're in Menti, please vote. That would be much appreciated. You can find the QR code and the link in the chat. So look, from your project, your FOLUR project and others, what gender inequality issue is the most critical to address for achieving success for you among the 6 listed at the bottom? Wage gaps and limited participation. Goes back to the earlier poll about leadership also, in decision making. We've got 10 people voted, 23 registered. Please give us your view, your comment. It's very interesting for us too. Yeah. It's interesting to see that regardless of the sector and participation in decision-making body seems to always come first.
And surprisingly, it's one of the sort of, I wouldn't say easiest, but the one that can be addressed more quickly in terms of at least numbers. You introduce gender quotas and the law, but what I think colleagues are thinking here is more meaningful participation, basically, not just having women as numbers, but
Yeah.
truly participating and having their voice heard. Because this is the case, that they are there, but often, and there are many reasons. We cannot go there because this is beyond FOLUR program. It's in other areas, but it's about opportunities. We start from there. Education, because there are these excuses that, well, but women are not sufficiently knowledgeable about the subject, so why they cannot contribute? Of course, if you cannot, first of all, they are, it's not true, but you have to go why because they've not had the opportunity to learn about the subject before, and you need to give them this opportunity and space to learn and to develop, even later in life when it wasn't possible when they were younger. So
yeah, and it's it doesn't matter where you look at,
yeah,
which part of the world. It doesn't really have anything to do with economic development. Similar issues everywhere. It may be more or less pronounced, but this is true absolutely everywhere.
yeah. And there is also, sorry, for these intimidations that happen when women become stronger and powerful, and especially in politics, to intimidation through social media, through direct coercing, threats, gender hate speech. So it's not easy to become a prominent woman and to have your voice heard. It's not easy. That's why women sometimes do not want to participate even. Like, it's hard to find sometimes women who are willing to because of this.
I would like to invite some comments or questions or ideas, or put your share your ideas in the chat or raise your hand. If you like to comment on that, I'm notably inviting our gender specialist in the room. Does that resonate with your experience, colleagues who are gender focal points? You're most welcome. Feel free before we move to the next part. Any view? You can type them in the chat box if it's easier for you. All right. Okay, so I propose we move to the next part, Alejandra. So we go into the presentation of our good colleague Patty from the World Bank, gender specialist, and looking at more specifically gender example and gender issue in FOLUR. So this is Patty's in the US, so she's recorded that for us. So we're going to watch that. Over to you, Alejandra.
Yes.
And then we will continue with some question and before we wrap up. Okay, go ahead.
Please let me know if you can hear it properly. I'm going to start it now.
Hello, everyone.
We hear it.
Kristjanson.
Thanks.
I'm with the FOLUR Food Systems Land Use Restoration Program. I'm the gender lead based at the World Bank, and I'm very happy to have you all joining us tonight. Basically, I'm going to jump right in. My presentation will build on the foundations that Stella has so nicely laid out for you. What I would like to focus on is the so what. This is what project teams ask over and over. What can we realistically do in order to advance gender equality along with all the other goals that your projects are seeking. It's ambitious, it's important, and it's very doable. So I would like to share examples with you across some of the FOLUR programs. What is being doing? What are we seeing that is really encouraging? And the progress that many of these projects have made. And I hope it will inspire you all. It always inspires. So of course, the key question is, well, what can project teams realistically do? What actions can they take? And I think we need to step back from this for one moment and say, well, first, it's really, really important to clarify the outcomes you are seeking. Regarding the whole gender challenge, we are seeking to enhance participation of all kinds of people, okay? Not just the most connected, not the most wealthy. Often it's people that have been excluded in decision-making processes. We want to get them more included in those decision-making processes regarding natural resource management, land and forest use management decisions, etc. But beyond that, we want to see them, we want to see project benefits, okay, enhanced livelihoods, increased incomes, lower greenhouse gases, better soils. I mean, these are the kinds of, environmental and physical outcomes, but we want to see the benefits going to people shared more equitably, okay? And FOLUR is particularly also seeking to go beyond this and really think about how do we empower people, all kinds of people, women, youths, indigenous groups, people that have historically been disadvantaged, okay? So again, coming back to what can we do as a project team implementing on the ground, I think it's kind of useful to think in terms of five main ways, sort of pathways, if you will, mechanisms, approaches that we have at our disposal when we're working on the ground with communities and governments, private sector, the whole spiel. We can think about really inclusive engagement and participatory processes. We can think about innovative and new technology-inspired communication approaches. Training, building capacity, strengthening capacity is part of every project. Of course, we've got to do that. We need to think more about catalyzing new innovations. How do we do that? And we'll come back to that. And then we need to be able to measure, monitor, and evaluate and talk about our results. So these are our five really things we can do at the project level. And we're going to go into them more one-on-one. So first of all, what do we mean by inclusive and participatory engagement processes? I think we've got great examples from almost all the FOLUR projects. In fact, all of them. You're all thinking about this engagement. How do we include people? How do we really do participatory approaches for integrated landscape management planning? So this, to me, is a very encouraging and successful result already coming out of the FOLUR projects, and we can talk more and share more of those results. For example, in Ghana, the FOLUR Ghana project is doing community resource management areas. That's been really participatory and inclusive, including women in these decisions on how do we manage our lands and our forests. But it's many other countries too: India, Ethiopia, Tanzania, Liberia, just to name a few. They're also thinking about strategic gender partners, such as women's groups that are working on the ground already, working with NGOs, CSOs that have been working very collaboratively in these areas. So it's a lot about not just processes, participatory processes, which you've all been doing, but strategic partners, and we'll come to that, back to that a little bit. So the second area I call innovative communication efforts. I think that we've got a lot more opportunities in this day and age to promote the use of mobile and digital technologies. And people often think about these in the terms of the techie stuff, like the GIS, the mapping, this is cool. But these can be used to reach people that have not been reached, okay? To think about the information, the ways in we share information. How do we communicate and reach people that have not been reached historically? And we've got some great examples in FOLUR projects. We've got the Papua New Guinea project that's got a great newsletter. I've really been enjoying reading it, coming out, that tells us what it's doing and the strategies and tactics, if you will, that it is taking. It's really thinking about targeted extension, agricultural extension materials to women and others. In Uganda, they're looking at radio programs and really targeting them on the technical aspects of climate-smart agriculture, integrated land use management, land rights, educating women on their land rights. In the Ukraine, they're doing some wonderful, they're really got a very woman-led team there, and they're targeting their comms and outreach activities to women and others. So we've got some great examples coming out of FOLUR, how this is a really good strategy. So of course, all projects do training, right? Strengthening capacity is a huge thing that most projects do. But thinking about how to take that to the next level to really empower people, to think about leadership trainings of women, youths, others. And this doesn't mean excluding men by any stretch of the imagination. It really means being creative and thinking about how to do this to empower both men and women. We've got some great FOLUR examples. In Indonesia, they're hiring women into strategic field coordination roles. They're acting as role models. They're engaging really directly in the project sites with rural women farmers. In Mexico, they were grappling with, okay, we are having these trainings and we want to support men and women coming to trainings, but for women that actually involved including childcare and having an option so that they could come with their young children, infants, and still interact with the technical. These are technical trainings. In Uganda, they developed a whole tailored women's leadership in integrated landscape management. So we've got wonderful examples coming out of our FOLUR projects. The fourth area, catalyzing innovations, I call it. This is broad and it involves a lot of different things, but in particular, I think enhancing women's access to finance and entrepreneurial activities is looming large, and what we are learning and looking across FOLUR projects. So targeted support to women-led enterprises, whether they be tree nurseries, groups, women's groups that are really engaged in processing and value adding. Moving women up the value chain is huge. We've got FOLUR Mexico working on women-led coffee brands, where these women's groups are getting much higher prices for their branded products. And this has involved working with financial institutes to do trainings and have them target their financial products a little bit more to women in particular. And the link between the financial institutes and the FOLUR project is a great example of that strategic partnership that I talked about. In Papua New Guinea, financial literacy trainings, again in a collaboration with a partner, the Center for Excellence on Financial Inclusion. Another wonderful example of a really great way to catalyze much more entrepreneurial activity, access to finance, because that's always been a huge issue for men as well as women, but particularly for women. The fifth area is, of course, in the monitoring and evaluation. So we need to be monitoring, collecting the data in a sex disaggregated, and ideally even beyond that, so we understand what younger people versus older people, what different groups that have been, again, traditionally disadvantaged, how are they benefiting from these project activities? And this is very, very site specific, right? So it's very difficult. I share a few examples here of some kinds of the indicators that you might want to be thinking about. And I really, really encourage project teams to reach out to us. We can share much more information if you're struggling with what are appropriate indicators. So in FOLUR, some examples are in both China and India. They really said their M&E system is going to be gender disaggregated. So even beyond male, female, they are collecting information about different types of people. China is very interested. It's doing some e-commerce efforts targeted at women. And they want to track those results. And you cannot track the results on how well these efforts are reaching women unless you've got the system to collect those indicators. And my other note on M&E is it's often the community members themselves and the women's groups, etc., that have to be involved. So, choosing the indicators with them, having them involved in how they are chosen and monitored is actually a very critical lesson we've been learning also. And in the whole area of monitoring, we are very good at monitoring outputs, the number of women trained, the number of events we had, but outcomes such as women's empowerment have been elusive. But we have the tools, we have the approaches to monitor things like women's empowerment. So I want to mention this Women's Empowerment Standard, W+. It's an approach, a framework that has really been developed from the ground up. It's looked thoughtfully at what are the areas that empower women, and they are in time savings, they are in leadership, they are in income and asset, they are in food security, they're in health, and they're in knowledge and education. And each of these areas has specific tools associated with them that you can collect this information. I guess my message to you is our projects are empowering women, but we're not necessarily capturing it. So we need to think about these kinds of approaches and tools, and we can capture this, we can value it, and we can get income back to women that are doing this really, really hard work. We've got an example in Brazil where they, a group working, a women-led NGO working with women on agroforestry, really took this to heart, and they said, we're not just going to do all this hard work and empower women, we are going to make sure we are measuring and monitoring it. And they use the W+ standard. And I can share all kinds of information more on details on this, but it's a wonderful example. And we've got another one from Mexico where we're sharing the information on how to do this, why it's important, how we can show we are not just reaching and participating with women and others, we are benefiting them, we are empowering them, okay? And we are empowering them in these different ways, and we can measure it, and we can put numbers to it, we can value it. And by the way, just like carbon credits, companies and governments and others want to show they're having these impacts. So they will buy these credits. So it's a step that involves accrediting this, getting in internationally renowned sort of neutral body, if you will, that will say, yes, this is happening on the ground. And just like a carbon credit, it can be sold for a monetary value on the markets, and then that money returned to the women that are doing all this this work. And I love this Brazil example because they thought of it from the project level as a pyramid. You know, at the bottom, we've got to educate young people and women. We're partnering with schools. We're setting up these agroforestry learning hubs. And then at the next level, we've got to think about leadership and financing. And so what are we doing there? And then we get to the top of the pyramid, if you will, that we're really generating more income for these women and others that are working very hard and using agroforestry techniques to better their livelihoods, their communities, etc. So, wrapping up, we are highlighting your efforts. We want to highlight your efforts more and more. What are you doing? What's working? What isn't working? Share it with us. We've got these series of practical briefs that are aimed at project teams to help you think about what can you be doing. And we're starting to share success stories. So please go to FOLUR.org knowledge to learn more about this. I hope these materials are very concise, short, useful for all of you. And please give me feedback. I'd love to hear what you're thinking, and we can sure follow up on any questions you have. So now for this session, I think the key questions we'd like to ask you are just two. First of all, could you share what gender-responsive strategies, approaches, activities your project team is using? If you're not involved in a project on the ground, you've been doing research, etc., you know, what are you thinking? Share it with us. What are you seeing? And secondly, what gender-related outcomes would you like to, or you think you will be able to measure? Again, I think aggregating and sharing this information is very valuable. One project alone is a little case study, a little story. We've got 27 FOLUR projects that we can build on, and we can tell a much more comprehensive, rich story. And also outside FOLUR. This is not by any means just limited to FOLUR. So join our gender community, share our stories, and please, I look forward to seeing what you guys share. Thank you all for your active participation, everyone sharing your experiences. It's really key. Together we can do so much more than we can alone. So thank you. And I'll say goodbye.
Thank you, Alejandra. I'm going to take over from here. Okay, Patty, I know you'll be listening to the recording. Thanks for sharing all this insights from FOLUR projects around the world. That's much appreciated. I'm going to share we're running a bit behind, so I'm going to share in the chat 2 questions that you've put on your slide. One is actually more specifically directed, the second one to colleagues who are gender focal point specialists in the call, and you know who you are. So feel free to answer the second question. And the first one is really a question to everyone. So if you want to take a few minutes to share this information for us, it's very useful. We can really highlight that in our facts community and in the follow community too. So take a few minutes before we gently wrap up, and don't leave now. The goodies are for the wrap up. So I'll give you a couple of minutes, and if you cannot do it now, do it offline later. Okay, my dear Alejandra, I would like to free everybody right on time. So would you mind loading up the next slide?
Absolutely, Pascal. We're indeed wrapping up today. So
Yeah.
we welcome everyone to join the FOLUR community to explore all the FOLUR gender resources that we have allocated there. And of course, please send an email to Patty, to Sandra, and feel free to download the app. It's very accessible. I highly, highly encourage it, as I usually use it on my phone as well. And over to you, Pascal.
Yeah, I just want to mention that in terms of next step, Stella, if you can hear me, or Sandra, either of you, what in 30 seconds, tell us more about the clinic that we will be organizing in the next few months.
Yes, Sandra, you wanna, or I can go ahead?
Go ahead, Stella, please.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. So yeah, during the first gender learning program, as we mentioned, we had this introductory course, and then we organized regional, more in-depth training sessions. This time, we're trying to do something more practical. Instead of having thematic trainings, we're gonna do clinics, which the idea is to have either one-to-one country offices or 1 or 2 country offices from the same region meet together and have them share directly their project, what they are doing, and have them ask questions to us, to Patty, to me, to Sandra. We can also bring in other experts if things are more technical, depending on the area, to find solutions. We can also help with reviewing plans that you have on gender equality, action plans that you may have developed or you are developing in the context of FOLUR program. This is mainly we're talking about FOLUR program here. So basically the idea is to be as close as possible to you and to be free from these formalities of workshop or trainings, to have like a more direct conversation with FOLUR country teams. That's why we call it clinics. You can also directly write to us at any time if you have any questions, if you need advice on anything. So this is part of the whole clinic idea. We have started to do this with some countries in Latin America, in Africa actually, and also Latin America, and we look forward to continue this also with Asian countries. So you may be hearing from Sandra, the gender focal points, more about this in the coming weeks.
Thank you, Stella. Yes, indeed, we are zeroing on your specific need through this clinic. So the next year, so stay tuned. Bear in mind that the gender working group or gender group in the FOLUR fax community is really a place to interact. A lot of resources that have been produced before. We will be sharing the slide. Alejandra mentioned that we're sharing the slide in the next day or so. And very importantly, we will also share the slide with a participation certificate that will come with the email that you receive. I've enjoyed facilitating this. Thank you for listening to us, paying attention. The issue is, as we all, and there will be more. Right after we end this call, there will be, I'll ask you to say 1 more minute or 2 more minutes to fill up. It's a post-workshop feedback, so helps us understand what you like, what you need more. So that's it. Now, Stella, hats off. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Patty, Sandra, Alejandra, and all of you. That's wonderful to see you, and I look forward to see you again. If you have any question about gender, Sandra Andraka is your contact point. Thanks a lot. Have a wonderful rest of the day for colleagues and start of the day for colleagues in the central part of the world. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.